Hi, I'm Jeff Mucklin, and this is Science at Home, which is brought to you by the Nurture Nature Center. This video is going to get a bit trashy because the topic is waste disposal. Now, the sign behind me here says, "Warning, no dumping," and it has a fine posted. This was put here to try to dissuade people from dumping material back here on this secluded road illegally. This sign was placed here because that has been a problem here for many years. This is an illegal dump site back here. Illegal dump sites are sometimes started when legal waste removal services are inadequate. Sometimes people use illegal dump sites to avoid waste disposal fees. And sometimes people start these places because they're not aware of cheap and easy legal ways of disposing waste. Whatever the reason is, illegal dump sites are a hazard. Pollution from the dump site can seep into nearby waterways. Wildlife can be exposed to hazardous substances. They can be a fire hazard. They can be a breeding ground for mosquitoes. This is particularly true wherever there are tires being disposed of illegally, although there are no tires that I can see here. If I walk around at this dump site, I can see two TVs right here. Over here, I can find some bundles of sticks that have been tied together and disposed of back in here. Again, that's a fire hazard. Building materials here, there's some slate and shingles down here. And over here, there are 3 more trash bags on the ground. One way to reduce illegal dumping is to post information, but another way is to post signage that informs people of legal ways of disposing of waste properly. This is the Sanitary Landfill in Williams Township, just across Route 78 from Southside Easton. This landfill accepts waste from the Lehigh Valley and western New Jersey. If you live in Easton, this is where your trash ends up after you put it out on the curb for pickup. This landfill has many advantages over that illegal dump site. No one really lives near this waste, for one thing. The landfill is lined with layers of impermeable soils and synthetic liners that ensure that toxic materials remain at the landfill and don't wind up in the groundwater or in our local waterways. Both the buried waste and the active dump sites are monitored to avoid the spread of harmful material into the surrounding environment. Now, some of the waste at the landfill is biodegradable. As biodegradable material decomposes in the open air, bacteria and other microorganisms produce carbon dioxide gas. If this same biodegradable material decomposes underground with a lack of oxygen, this favors microorganisms that produce methane gas instead of carbon dioxide. Methane gas can be harmful to the environment. To prevent the escape of this gas, it is actually collected underground before it ever escapes to the atmosphere by pipes that are buried down there where the methane gas is being generated. It's drawn away from the landfill through these pipes to, in some cases, to a flare tower where it's just burned. It produces a lot of heat and light and some carbon dioxide gas. But nearby from where I'm standing, there's a much better use for this gas. At this location, that methane that is being burned is being used to generate electricity. There are 2 generators back there, and they are able to produce enough electricity to power about 2,200 homes. Although the burning of methane here results in the production of CO2, which is a greenhouse warming gas, at this site we're actually reducing our overall emissions of these gases. Thought of in these terms, this facility is preventing the release of 40 million pounds of CO2 annually, which is equivalent to taking over 3,000 cars off the road. Materials like glass, metals, cardboard, and some plastics can be recycled relatively easily. And some of these materials particularly the metals, are so useful that you can actually exchange them for money at some recycling centers and scrap yards. You should have a blue recycling bin at your home for these materials. If you live in Easton, you can drop off these materials at the Easton Recycling Center. Recycling is an important way that we can reduce our impact on the environment, but it is not a cure-all. In reality, less than 10% of all plastics are actually recycled. Many products have symbols like these that indicate that they are recyclable, and they technically are, but outside of laboratory conditions, this is not really possible, and it isn't economically practical for many of these products. Realistically, only number 1 and 2 plastics are likely to be recycled in most places. The rest will be incinerated or taken to a landfill. The best way to prevent plastic from harming the environment and taking up space in landfills is to reduce our consumption of plastic, especially single-use plastic products. Now here at the Easton Recycling Center, you can drop off not only plastics, and again, they take plastics 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. You can also drop off aluminum, tin, glass, cardboard. They have a cardboard crushing container over here. If you live in the city of Easton, you probably received one of these letters in the mail that tells you everything you need to know about how to prepare materials for the recycling bin. For example, you should clean materials before they go into the bin and take off the caps. To find out how we use compost, let's go to a dedicated facility for that. Compostable materials are certain kinds of biodegradable food scraps and plant materials that can be broken down into nutritious compost that can be used to fertilize soil for plants. Not all biodegradable materials are appropriate for a compost bin. Animal manure, for example, is not appropriate. Paper products are biodegradable, but they should not be placed in a compost bin. Here at the Lower Hackett Community Garden, you can find these compost bins that were provided by the Easton Compost program. Since 2018, the program has diverted over 123,000 pounds of food waste to the compost program. For this week's at-home activity, I encourage you to make your own compost bin. This is a relatively easy activity, though it does require the use of power tools. I needed a drill and a half-inch drill bit in order to make my compost bin, so any young people watching this should definitely get help from an adult for that part of the activity. So you're going to need a garbage can with a lid that locks on. If it doesn't have locks, you're going to want to get bungee cords to wrap around it to make sure the lid doesn't come off. So you take your can, this is a 32-gallon can, and you drill holes into it. Make sure you drill holes all up and down the sides, into the bottom, and into the top. And this is to ensure that air flow passes through your compost, which is necessary for the bacteria that are going to turn this into nice, rich soil. Once you've drilled the holes into your compost bin, you're going to want to put it on top of some bricks or maybe some 2x4s, just elevated off of the ground, again, to make sure that airflow can get in even through the bottom of the can. You don't want it sitting directly on the ground. And you can start adding your compostable ingredients. As you add things to your compost bin, you want to try to maintain a ratio of about 50% browns, 50% greens. Browns would include things like paper and sticks and leaves, and greens would be vegetables, noodles, pasta. Stir your compost about once every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks we can just tip our bin over and we can roll it around the yard for a little bit, and that should stir up our compost very nicely. So I decided to come back to that illegal dump site and pick up some of the trash. If you want to do your part to reduce the waste pollution problem, make sure to never litter. Always put trash in the trash bin, recyclables in the recycling bin, and compostable materials into the compost bin. Those are the 3 waste streams. And also remember the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. And remember that they're in order of importance. Recycling is great, but it's even better when we can reuse materials. And it's even better still if we can reduce our consumption of things we probably didn't need anyway. I'm talking about unnecessary, especially unnecessary single-use plastic. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.